oftentimes people are spending about 50% of their day on admin repetitive tasks. And if something's repetitive, then we can teach to do it for them. So what previously would have taken them 4, 5, 6 hours, depending on a number of factors, now takes 10 minutes. Time is, as Seneca said, the one thing you can't get back once you spend it, right? So
that's true.
Money, you might waste it, you can always earn it back.
Founder of Collective Campus, a corporate innovation accelerator helping organizations adapt to rapid change. Featured in the Harvard Business Review for his work on learning, productivity, and the future of work, he empowers leaders and teams to embrace innovation and thrive in a fast-evolving business landscape. Meet Steve Glaveski.
Welcome to a new episode of Business Meets Life, and welcome to beautiful Bali, where I had the pleasure to meet Steve 1.5 years ago. Let's quickly get to know who exactly is Steve. So when Steve was 8 years old, he was a huge NBA fan, but his dad, and as you called him, a frugal, hardworking migrant from Yugoslavia, wouldn't buy him the basketball magazines he wanted. But his dad got him a new set of pencils and markers for Christmas. So what did Steve do? He started making his own magazines, right? Makes sense. Completed with like cover art, pull-out posters, and long-form articles. Damn it, you were just 8 years old. As Steve actually got older, he deviated from the creative path to climb the corporate ladder at EY, KPMG, and Macquarie Bank. Did I say it right?
Macquarie Bank, close enough.
All right. But he couldn't suppress that creative kid inside him forever. Since 2013, 12 years now, he has been an entrepreneur, a writer, and a podcaster. And amongst other things, Steve actually founded a Collective Campus, a global corporate innovation consultancy, I think even award-winning, right? And a startup accelerator that incubated 100 companies collectively worth over $1 billion today. Steve wrote a couple of YLA books just on the side, right? One of them is called Employee to Entrepreneur, that was 2019, and Time Rich, 2020. A dozen articles for Harvard Business Review, and he also has a podcast. Future Squared has generated over 1 million downloads. Wow. So when Steve actually is not working, that's why we see him so casual here today. He actually likes headbanging to the 80s metal at the squat rack, reading a book, or trying to surf Bali, right? And hold a Warrior 3 pose. Wait, do you do this at the same time?
Not at the same time. I've tried. I would not advise it.
All right. Okay. So, Steve, thank you so much for making time, because you're not just for vacation in Bali. You're currently here. And isn't it actually true what they all say, that Mama Bali makes all your wishes come true super fast while you're here? Is that why you're here?
Well, firstly, I have to say, do you charge people to follow them around and provide intros wherever they go? Because that was a fantastic intro. Very well researched.
I should. I would change that.
That should be one of your new service offerings.
I love it.
Tailored personal introductions for keynote talks, podcasts, just whoever. Like if someone even goes out on a date with someone, you turn up and you make the introduction on that first date. Just like pump them up.
Oh my gosh,
this could be a whole new sort of
Is this how you actually start all the new startups with your potential clients? That's how it's just
first
happening?
We come up with the idea. Now we got to test the assumptions underpinning this idea. So maybe a landing page with some sort of call to actions, and we'll see. Who knows? It could be a career pivot for you.
I'm in. Where do I have to sign?
We'll talk later. But to answer your question, I think Bali, there's 3 things that happen here that just make things happen, right? So 1, the quality of the people that come here.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of digital nomads, entrepreneurs, people into their fitness, athletes, all sorts of stuff. 2, the density of the place. Like we're in Canggu at the moment, and it's a very small place in terms of like square kilometers, right? Within 5 or so square kilometers, you just have thousands upon thousands of people with those types of profiles, constantly chance encounters in cafes, in gyms, on the street, restaurants, bars, whatever it is. So you're always meeting interesting people. And finally, I think the third factor is people are just so open to having conversations, to meeting other people. They want to connect. And I think
Right.
when you combine those three factors in a place like Bali, where generally we're happy here, like the climate's awesome, it's warm, there's beach, there's surf, there's all sorts of amazing things going on, that it just, yeah, things happen faster, whether it's in your professional or personal life. I think if you find yourself in a bit of a rut, come out to Bali for a month, and I'm sure that you will come out of it in a better place.
So Steve and I actually had met just randomly in a restaurant here in Bali. So that's what I loved about Bali. And it was my first time 1.5 years ago. And I was so surprised. I mean, he's Australian, right? And Australians are easy to talk to. And being outside of China, it was actually a wonderful experience to get to know people so easily. That was one of the reasons why, yeah, Bali is definitely amazing.
Absolutely.
So let's go back in the past. You started making your own basketball magazine at the age of 8, right? What do you think that this early spark of creativity says about who Steve is today?
I mean, ultimately, I think that early sparks spoke to, if you haven't got the resources, it speaks to that whole idea that necessity is the mother of creativity and invention. So in that case, there was this magazine. My dad bought it for me one time. It was called One on One, and it basically featured the NBA as well as the Australian Basketball League at the time. But as you alluded to earlier, he's a frugal, hardworking migrant, and I asked him to buy it the following month. It came out. He said, "I'm not going to waste money on that." So I got these pens and pencils and whatever, started making my own. And essentially, I think I've always operated from a place of like frugality when it comes to business, and bootstrapping businesses, leveraging automation, AI, offshore support, prioritizing effectively, not wasting money on flashy things just for the sake of it, to help each dollar go as far as it can possibly go. And I also coach a lot of the businesses that I work with around this stuff. So the fact that I wrote a book called Time Rich and the case for the 6 hour workday for Harvard Business Review, and a lot of content around time management, productivity, efficiency. I think I could trace that line all the way back to me being an 8-year-old and not having money to buy the magazine, so just making them myself.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And actually, it was part of these habits that you just mentioned, where it was like, wow, getting to know you a little bit more over time and knowing what you have achieved and seeing the private you here in Bali 1.5 years ago. I was like, I have to interview you for my podcast. I just didn't have the courage to ask you immediately. And I was also thinking, like, what are actually some of these habits? Because I saw some of these habits already that I think that is also the reason why you're so successful. Can you share with our global audience your, I don't know, morning habits, your time management? I know we can read your book, but some of the most important ones that you really implement every day, even if you're in Bali and people think you're just here for vacation.
Yeah. In terms of morning habits or just habits throughout the day, I think it's important to set the right foundation. So sleeping on average 8 hours a night, eating well most of the time, working out every morning so I get my cognitive sort of juices flowing, and the emotional regulation and everything that comes with working out, the dopamine boost, the brain derived neurotrophic factor, which helps you focus, like all that sort of stuff that comes from working out. For me, at least, it's fundamental to getting the most out of myself throughout the day, keeping those energy levels high, and yeah, just being able to actually take the right energy to my work. Whereas if I don't sleep well, if I'm not working out, if I'm eating poorly, I'll just feel lethargic and really run down. And that's going to reflect in the quality of the work and the quantity of the work that I do. Aside from that foundation, a couple of acronyms that I have spoken to in my books and my articles. One is P codes, and P codes basically stands for prioritize, because the 80-20 rule applies everywhere and also in your work. If you've got 10 tasks to do, chances are 2 of those tasks are way more important than the other 8. So prioritize effectively, cut out unnecessary work that you probably have been doing on autopilot, or you're just doing because it makes you feel busy and important, but it's not really moving the needle. Outsource to offshore VAs where you can.
Virtual
Automate.
assistants.
Absolutely. VAs through platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, and so on. Automate using AI and automation tools like N8N, Zapier, Make.com, and others of that persuasion. The T in P codes basically stands for test. So a lot of people waste a lot of their time in two ways. One is jumping to conclusions. They've got an idea and they're like, okay, I'm going to go hell bent for leather on this. And they spend 12 months on something. And
Oh, the German approach, 150% like quality perfectionism before we go out and
absolutely.
test it, right?
Absolutely. So you waste your time that way, or you're forever stuck in analysis paralysis and you're in stealth mode, just working on things privately because you're too scared to put it out there in case it fails, really. And so the answer to both of those problems is T for test. So get out there, test things as quickly as possible, whether it's positive feedback, whether it's negative, whatever you can learn, you can iterate and slowly make your way towards something that is actually worth spending your time on.
Yeah.
So that's P codes, and the S is start your engines, which basically is all the stuff that I spoke about earlier. So should have ended with that anyways. But start your engine is start your physical engine, your cognitive engine, your physiological sort of biological system, so you can get the best out of yourself. Now that's the kind of stuff that you would apply to your approach to work, your systems over the course of a year. There's another acronym that I would love to share with your audience.
Yes, please.
And it's basically called tires. And I say ditch the spare tires that are slowing you down. And so in this age of smartphones and I suppose hyperconnectivity, there's a number of things we do that just sabotage our productivity. One is task switching. So the average person switches screens once every 40 seconds.
Every 40 seconds.
Every 40 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the thing about switching screens and switching tasks is each time you switch tasks, you suffer a cognitive switching penalty. Your brain has to reorient around different contexts. And that one saps energy and two takes you out of the flow state.
Which is a good reminder. It's actually not only about time management, it's about energy management. And especially if we live in these super fast moving, crazy cities like Shanghai, New York, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sydney.
Yeah, it's time management, it's energy management, and it's also managing your brain's ability to stay in flow, which is, you know, when you're in that flow state, you're about 5 times more productive than otherwise. However, when you are switching tasks, you're taking yourself out of flow. And numerous studies show that it takes about 20, 23 minutes to get back into flow. But if you're switching screens every 40 seconds, basically the average person isn't spending any time in flow.
How do you get yourself in flow?
There are different ways, depends on what I'm doing. But a simple example that a number of writers use is if I am writing a book or an article and it's long form and maybe I need to take a break, I will stop halfway through a sentence. And when I come back to it, I finish that sentence. So I'm not suffering writer's block. The faster you can build momentum with whatever you're doing, the faster you will get into flow. So it's the same with anything. If I'm reading a book, I can, and you get that feeling when you're sitting on the couch late at night. Maybe it's been a long day. You're in Shanghai. It's a busy city, lots of energy drain. You sit on the couch. It can be so much more tempting to just turn on Netflix and maybe watch Happy Gilmore 2, which came out yesterday. I've yet to check it out. But as a fan of Happy Gilmore 1, I'm looking forward to it. You could do that. But if you want to build a habit of picking up that book, commit to reading like the first page. And the first page very easily turns into the first chapter. And that momentum, that is how you get into flow, and it's much easier to keep going. However, the moment you pick up your phone when you're halfway through that chapter and look at Instagram for 5 minutes, it kills it all. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the T in tires. The Y, we sabotage our time by saying yes too much. So learn to say no to things that aren't aligned with your priorities, because when we say yes to people all the time, we're putting their priorities ahead of our own. So while there might be something noble about that, if it comes at the cost of your goals, it's not useful, because you only have so much time on this earth. You've got your goals, you've got your values, you want to do things that align with them.
It's a good reminder. First of all, thank you for saying yes when I asked you for the podcast. Secondly, I think especially a lot of women, they have this pleaser saboteur inside them. I'm not saying men don't have it, right? Where it's really challenging for them to say no.
Mm.
But it's a good reminder that we should do this even more.
Yeah. I mean, time is, as Seneca said, the one thing you can't get back once you spend it, right? So
That's true.
money, you might waste it, you can always earn it back.
Talking about your habits, if I may add though, having observed you a little bit,
Yeah.
something that I found so impressive the first time when we met is when you manage, for example, when you are on your phone and replying and when you are not, right? And I could, with WhatsApp, you can really see that the person received the message, if the person see the message actually. I could really see that there is a system behind it. I also found it very interesting. You get up super early every day, whether it's 6, 5:30, 6:30, and then you go for surfing, you do your gym, maybe you have your coffee routine or something like to really get you started. You have a good, strong morning routine. And something very funny. This might sound very simple, but I think business people, and especially in cultures like Asia and so on, we sometimes have to drink to do business, right? And when you have a choice, even about the alcohol, like right, we had a drink, and instead of going for the cocktail with a lot of sugar, because it's tasty or and so on, you actually explained me, if you don't mind sharing.
Oh, well, I ordered a skinny bitch drink, as it's colloquially known in Australia. Basically a vodka soda lime. It's got no sugar in it. It's basically 90% water. So essentially you can drink that and not get hungover, feel okay in the morning, and essentially, no, very, very low calorie drink. It's not an entirely guilt-free drink, but compared to say a vodka cranberry or a cocktail, which can have 30, 40 plus grams of sugar, to me, it's like all these little things can add up over time.
Yeah.
So if you start normalizing having 2 or 3 cocktails, it's 120 odd grams of sugar. That's people don't think about it that way, but that's basically like 20, say 25 teaspoons of sugar.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. People would balk at the idea of putting 3 teaspoons of sugar in their coffee. Like, that's a lot of sugar. Then they're just down cokes and cocktails and all this stuff, which just it affects your body and your mind's ability to operate.
Yeah.
It's best. So
It's a small detail, just that choice of the drink, if you have to or want to have one,
yeah.
with a huge impact for the next day, the productivity of your work, your interactions with family, friends, customers, and so on. So good tip. Thank you. Let's talk about your corporate life a little bit. So you had this super impressive corporate career at EY, KPMG, and Mercury Bank.
I'll pay that.
Thank you. What was the trigger or the turning point that you had that this when you decided to, okay, it's time to step away to start something on your own? Because a lot of people talk about it. Yeah, I want to quit my job. I hate my job, or whatever it is, but they never do it.
I think in my case, I did the conventional thing, got educated, climbed the corporate ladder, and it was around the age of 30 where I found myself. I learned a lot at those organizations. I had a lot of fun. It was probably right for that stage of my life, work hard, play hard sort of environment. But I found the work just made me feel miserably comfortable. Like the money was good, business class flights, corporate junkets, corporate cars, all that type of thing. But I didn't really get any fulfillment from the work. Helping big organizations comply with regulatory requirements, things of that persuasion wasn't really pushing the right buttons for me. And I think what gave me the confidence to jump out was while I was working at Macquarie Bank, I had a side hustle called Hotdesk, which was basically like an Airbnb for office space. Built a simple prototype back to the idea of testing, sent emails to every real estate and tech journalist whose email I could find back in 2013. It was much harder back then because you didn't have tools like Rocket Reach or Hunter to do email scraping for you. I think I went on Twitter and looked for journalist bios, and some of them had the email address in their Twitter bio. and then just spammed all of them with a press release that I wrote myself, introducing the idea, the concept. And most of them ignored it, except one who was a cadet journalist at The Australian, which is, I suppose, our version of like the Wall Street Journal in a way. And yeah, that article got the interest of some angel investors, and they cut a check for just under 200K. Not a lot of money,
Australian dollars.
yeah, so not a lot of money, but enough to kind of give me a 2-year runway. Really had to like scale back costs and personal expenses and whatnot just to give that a shot. But that investment, that validation that I got, fake validation really, but getting that media attention at the time as a naive first time entrepreneur gave me the confidence to say, okay, let's just jump out and give this a go. And also what I tell a lot of people when you're like deliberating over something like leaving a job for entrepreneurship or something like that, ask yourself what's the worst that can happen. If it doesn't work out, just go back to the corporate world.
Yeah.
I think people overstate or overestimate the negative uh, externalities and eventualities that may arise when really the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out. You learned a hell of a lot. Maybe you had some fun, and then you go back to what you were doing.
That's why nowadays, even like after 7 years of being an entrepreneur, I still keep good relationships with former bosses at HP and in the IT world, even back in Germany and other countries.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. Now, how would you say that your time in corporate finance actually influence on how you run your businesses nowadays?
I would say that maybe I would say that maybe on some kind of subconscious level, it helps. But I dare say that the majority of what I have learned and applied to business, I've learned after leaving that world.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think a lot of what you learn in corporate is applicable only to corporate. Now, no doubt there are things that I learned, soft skills, relationship management, stakeholder management, how to like prepare for a meeting, how to run a meeting. But in terms of hard skills, marketing, sales, product development, customer segmentation, like doing all these things that entrepreneurs do. I didn't really learn any of that in corporate. I had to learn that through podcasts, books, workshops, other people, and really just apply it and go from there. So I dare say, though, maybe that there are the value of working in corporate for me as a B2B entrepreneur with Collective Campus was understanding how corporates operate, how they make decisions, and being able to then tailor my pitches, proposals, approaches to that audience and get deals over the line.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've never worked in the corporate world and you're like a 21-year-old entrepreneur, you might not understand how those corporates make decisions, how they've got to align 17 people internally and get through all this red tape just to get over the line. It's not like talking to one person.
Yeah.
So learning how to get buy-in and whatnot, if you are a young B2B entrepreneur, is so, so important.
So everything that you just mentioned, answering the last question, I think there's a huge to-do list for everyone here who would like to quit their jobs, or maybe you want to start becoming an entrepreneur. Because what I see, and especially like, I mean, having a training coaching company myself, a lot of coaches who quit their job, they might be great in being a coach or in whatever business you do, right? But they're lacking all these other skills. This is something that if you haven't learned it in your former career, you need to level up by yourself. And one of the biggest learnings I've gotten is what you also mentioned, marketing and sales. Especially if you cannot sell, you cannot be successful in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people think that building the product is the thing. It's not. Anyone can build a product. I mean, you can ship product development offshore and pay not a lot of money to get whatever you want built. But will people buy it? Will they know about it? How do you get it out there? How do you compel them to actually take money out of their pocket and hard-earned money and give it to you in exchange for this thing that you've built?
Yeah.
That's really where most startups go wrong. You know, people say there's all these reports on startups, and the number one reason they fail is market failure, building stuff people don't want to buy and or
Mm,
running out of money. But they're really the same thing. If you build something that people wanted to buy, you wouldn't run out of money. So
that's true.
yeah.
Now you've incubated over 100 startups worth over $1 billion through Collective Campus.
Yeah.
What made this venture so successful? And how many years was that you did it? 5?
Over about 5 years we incubated those startups. Yeah. What made it so successful? I think with questions like that, you can always fall victim to the narrative fallacy and kind of pick one or two things when really there was probably a multitude of factors, both seen and unseen, that made it successful. But I do think that timing plays such a big part. So timing and perhaps right place, right time as well. So being in Australia in the mid 2010s, so around 2015, there were only so many players doing what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
The startup boom was starting to take off. Corporates were starting to take interest in the startup ecosystem, starting to get exposure to it. Accelerators were starting to take off, and there was only maybe one or two other players who were also quite sort of emergent at the time.
Yeah.
And we kind of came in and plugged that vacuum. And yeah, timing is really important. So I guess the question that a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this might want to ask themselves is, how could they take advantage of that today? Like, what is the next, whether it's a micro sea change or a macro one that they can get in front of? What's that next wave? Because if you can get in front of a wave, as surfers know here in Bali, you can ride that wave. You obviously can't ride it from behind the wave, right? You'll never catch it.
And in your opinion, what are those next trends, these next waves, these next even countries or regions where we should jump on now? Because even myself, I was like, gosh, I came to China just end of 2017. I felt like the best times of China were kind of over. I mean, there's always opportunities, right? And then, like, if we look at cryptocurrencies, I wish, like, when I was still at HP 9, 10 years ago, I would have invested already back then. And these things, right? We have these regrets, we look back, but what should we do now?
I don't have a crystal ball, and the rate at which things are changing, especially with AI, I don't think anyone can say hand on heart what's going to be the next thing, but you can place bets based on calculated forecasting. And what I say isn't going to be news to people. There's a reason why I've been focusing increasingly on AI automation for the past year, because the demand for that, I feel, is like the next land grab in some way. Back in the late 90s up till, say, late noughties, it was really that first generation, like Web 1.0 moving into the start of Web 2.0, things like digital marketing, social media marketing. It was a massive land grab, SEO. If you were early then, you could have done really well. And I feel like now with AI automation, helping companies adopt AI across sales, marketing, product, customer support, whatever it is, can if you can tailor your offering for those, if you can tailor your offering across those parts of the value chain for different industries and position yourself well, whether it's small to medium businesses in your area or larger ones, or thinking outside your area, I think you can do really, really well. Plus, you're staying ahead of the curve, because you'd rather be using AI than fall victim to being replaced by it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a scary time as well, even for people in my place, even for people in my space, because I see the stuff that I'm doing also being commoditized, because what I do is set up workflows for people to automate tasks. But then I also see people creating products that will basically replace what those workflows do for a small monthly fee. And so it's constantly changing. So yeah, I tell people this all the time. Currently, knowledge work is probably the most endangered type of work. You're probably safer being a plumber or an electrician today.
Absolutely, especially like in Australia, like tradies, I think they already make a lot of like money in these kind of work, right?
If you have a business and a handful of people working for you and a full calendar of multiple jobs going on at the same time, you can make several, if not up to like $1 million a year. But sometimes that is a bit of a people only. I guess it's survivorship bias. So we hear a lot about these tradies who are like killing it. You don't hear about everyone else is kind of just doing okay or just barely scraping by, right? And it is a long learning curve as well. You've got to go through like 3 to 4 year apprenticeships and all the rest of it, work for someone else for a few years, and then eventually get to maybe starting a business, working for yourself before hiring someone. That's probably like an 8 to 10 year journey. So even in that space, it's not easy. Like that's a universal law. You've got to work hard and put in the time.
Exactly. But we love challenges, right?
Absolutely.
Let's go back to the AI and automation. I mean, AI and automation is a buzzword. Everybody sees it all the time, but I am very surprised how many people, even like corporates that I work with, and I also give some AI trainings, how they don't have proper strategies and tools and individualized solutions integrated yet, even like big corporates, which is surprising. And for some people, they have prejudices and they have fears, and we all see the numbers. Yes, whether it's 40% or whatever, like of the workforce that will get replaced. With the work that you're doing, tell me a little bit about it, and maybe share 1 or 2 like client cases on how you've made an impact through AI agents, automation. Some people might not even know what are AI agents, and how others also can get started.
Yeah. So as I alluded to, the work that we're doing basically takes different tasks that you might have across ops, admin, marketing, sales, customer support, product development, R&D, and automates whatever can be automated. Because oftentimes people are spending about 50% of their day on admin and repetitive tasks. And if something's repetitive, then we can teach AI to do it for them. One such example, recently we automated a content workflow for a client, which will basically automate the development of their Instagram videos, YouTube videos. This includes AI generated avatars of company founder reading out a script that AI generated in his voice, in his style, with his mannerisms. It adds B-roll. It creates captions for Instagram, LinkedIn, and posts on platforms that have an open API for posting as well. So what previously would have taken them 4, 5, 6 hours, depending on a number of factors, now takes 10 minutes. All they do is they take a PDF file. It could be a journal around, because this company's, their whole business is around healthcare. So they might take a journal on the benefits of testosterone to male health from PubMed or something. They'll drop it in a Google Drive folder, and then the AI basically does the transcription research based on that PDF, creates the scripts, and then generates all the assets and saves it into an Airtable for them with all the links. That's just one of many processes a business can automate across.
And so many people would need it, not just like now, as you mentioned, in the healthcare industry. We spoke about real estate recently, and especially like in different industries, in different geographies even.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's crazy. And one thing I'm seeing a lot of demand for, I get clients telling me, especially in the knowledge space, so coaches, consultants, facilitators saying, I can't clone myself. I wish there was a way for my students, my clients to be able to ask me questions. And I basically say, well,
there is now,
right? You've got hundreds of thousands of emails you've sent. You've got all your workshop material. You've got podcasts you've been on. You've got articles you've published. Maybe you've published a few books. Let's take all that intellectual property, fit it into your own little AI bot. And then whether it's, Janine bot or Steve bot or whoever else, people can come in and ask questions of us, and that bot will respond as if it's us based on our own knowledge and the way we talk.
Okay, so when and where can I buy the Steve bot? Because you have achieved so much, and being able to talk to you on a daily basis if I need business advice would already be amazing. And then maybe pairing it for real estate, if you have a real estate business or a healthcare business with maybe that founder's knowledge, that would be like, oh my gosh, unstoppable, I guess.
I guess. But to my earlier point, I also see this kind of stuff being commoditized in a while. Like it'll just become normal. So it's exciting now, but you really, if education's been something going way back to Plato and Socrates, it's always been advocated for. But the rate at which we need to learn now, just to stay current, it's higher, it's faster than ever. So
yeah. What advice would you have for creators, entrepreneurs, executives that want to scale with lean automated systems?
What advice do I have? I think just start testing, because ultimately it's easy to become overwhelmed with the number of
Yes.
AI tools out there. Maybe just find one task that is repetitive and time consuming in your organization.
Mm,
Then use a platform like NA10 perhaps, or make.com or Zapier, but that one isn't as sophisticated. And see if you can find a template to automate that task. Now, that template will need some customization, or speak to someone like me, go online, find an automation consultant, and ask them to automate that one task for you. Set a budget that you're happy to spend, happy to waste, and it won't be a waste, because once you see the results, you feel the
wow.
benefit, you'll see how much time you're saving. Like, wow, this is amazing, and it cost me barely any money, and that's going to repay itself so many times over the
Yeah.
course of the year. What else can I use this for?
Yeah.
And then the floodgates open.
I really gotta say, I like the videos that you posted on LinkedIn recently and on your YouTube. Steve
Yeah.
has these really cool, nice little hacks, quick videos where he's guiding you through how you automate this or that other task.
Yeah.
Really nicely done. Thank you for sharing. And I highly recommend also to hire him for your automation. Let's talk about your podcast. Oh my gosh, you have just hit 437 episodes. I mean, you've already reached your millions of downloads like a longer time ago, right? That again shows the discipline, the habits, the mindset that Steve has of what basically made him also so successful, in my opinion. What kept you going? I mean, people get sick, there's life happening. What kept you going? What would you credit most to its success?
A couple of things. I haven't published an episode in a while now, so those 437 episodes, I'd say 350 of those were in the first 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then the subsequent 87 or so were in the next 4 years. So
Oh
yeah, and
yeah, so pretty good.
I think it served a purpose for the first 5 years, which was, one, built awesome relationships. That's probably what kept me going, kept me doing it. So it's because I got to speak with people like James Clear and Kevin Kelly and Robert Greene and all these high profile authors that have sold millions and millions of books. I spoke to VCs like Brad Feld, Jason Calacanis, and how else am I going to build those relationships and connect with people like that unless I have a podcast with a decent sized following? And
Yeah.
so that kept me going for a very long time. And in terms of the podcast initial sort of success, I would again credit that to timing, right time, right place, because 2016, when I started that podcast, there was like 1/500th the number of podcasts out there. So I was early to the game. And it's funny because at the time I thought I was late, because
Oh, really?
yeah, podcasting had been around for about 6, 7, 8 years by that point. And it's one of those things, right? You always think you're late. But now it's like 2016, dude, that was like so early. And part of me also thinks, because for the most part, I did like a audio only, right? And part of me thinks, if I had done video and produced it properly from day one and really made it my main thing, starting at that time, it could have potentially been like way bigger than what it was. Like, I'm happy with where it got to, but I guess it's the lesson for me, at least, is that hyper focus on one thing, but that comes at a risk, comes with the risk that it doesn't work. And then you're like, oh crap. So I guess my thing, and it's a strength and a weakness, depending on how you look at it. I've always had multiple things going on, which means you've always got money coming in. It's sustainable, whether it's consulting, running workshops, selling books. But at the same time, and this is something that I've had to kind of get better at with time, is focusing more on one thing. Because the more you can focus on one thing, everything you do, whether it's positioning your product, knowing your customer, having your sales scripts optimized, your website, your funnels, like everything you do, because you're spending all your time focusing on that one product, that one customer, that one offer, is as optimized as it can be. Whereas the moment you start introducing 2, 3, 4, 5 different things, 6, it can really dilute that sort of quality.
And every successful person says that with the focus.
Yeah.
So nowadays in 2025, do you still think that businesses, companies, entrepreneurs should start a podcast? now that it has already been existing for a while?
Depends on what their goals are. I think you can always break through, providing you're doing something new and exciting. It's not easy to. Like rule number one is always persistence with everything. Even Mr. Beast, I read his leaked internal memo about his channel, and they often have people reaching out to them asking for advice, and he basically said, tell those people, unless they've published 100 episodes, don't bother, because for the first 100 episodes you don't know what you're doing. But also, it's kind of like a screen of sorts, because if someone does get to 100 episodes, it shows that this person has the discipline, persistence to keep going. And that's the kind of person that Mr. Beast, perhaps, and his team want to actually give time to.
I found it, I was trying to model Mr. Beast's scripts and his thumbnails and a couple of things. So I studied it a bit as well. But he has a very specific style. And I was a couple of these things, even for social media videos, I felt like, it gets me out of the comfort zone because it doesn't really fit with like my brand, who I am, my way of thinking. But then on the other hand, why not try something else?
Absolutely. And one thing he does say with regards to his style and his thumbnails and stuff is vehemently opposed to the whole like open mouth thumbnail thing. So you'll notice in all his thumbnails, he's just smiling normally. So whereas a lot of people have this, I don't know, misconception that you've got to be like in your thumbnails, isn't it?
Maybe that should be our thumbnail then.
Maybe, mouth's open.
We should try that out. With Monday Morning Motivation, we had about 250 episodes. Now it's continuing, but I stepped out of it. Yeah, with this podcast, we're only at like 60, 70.
Yeah.
Yeah, but before that, I had a different name for it. So yeah,
I would say
100.
But I would also say with podcasting, like it's not all about getting lots of numbers; it's about getting the right numbers. So don't think about Modern Wisdom and Diary of a CEO and these podcasts that are getting millions of downloads per episode. Think about, are you doing it for business purposes?
Yeah, the relationship building. Nobody thinks about it.
Absolutely, and maybe all you need is 5,000 loyal listeners.
Let's go a little bit to the private part of you. So you're currently in Bali.
It's just for the premium subscribers to get access to the private part.
Absolutely. I love it. How has this environment impacted your creativity, productivity, or happiness? Because we spoke a lot about your success.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to it.
Yeah. I used to be a big believer of Seneca's quote that wherever you go, there you are, or some variation of that. And I still believe that to be true to some degree, but oftentimes our disposition, the way we feel, our mood can just be a byproduct of the environment we're in. The climate has an impact, people you're around has an impact, the location, maybe you're in the suburbs when you really want to be next to a beach. And when I'm in Bali or places like this, like the community, climate, even the locals are so friendly. The opportunities to surf every day, everything's in walking distance. The vibe, it definitely does wonders for my sort of disposition, mood, and that energy I'm then able to invest in work, relationships, having conversations like this. So I'm not a psychologist. I think if someone has ongoing, persistent, emotional challenges, definitely speak to a therapist. Sometimes those challenges could be biological. They could be a byproduct of what's happening in your life, maybe breakups, maybe you're not happy with work, or it could just be the environment you're in. And so while Seneca was partly true, I also think there's something to be said about changing where you live or where you spend your time, and that can have a dramatic effect on how you feel.
How would you personally define happiness and success? Like the version of you that you are today? Because I still feel like, living in China, a lot of people all over Asia or other places, they still think happiness equals money. But this is just one part of it.
Yeah, and I can understand why they think that. I think oftentimes we chase what we don't have. And for a long time, China, especially during the century of humiliation, as it was known, it was a poor country, and it's only been since Deng Xiaoping liberated that economy that you've had this massive emerging middle class, and I think there's still that holdover from the 20th century, and people still think that, okay, money, status, designer brands, that's happiness. And there is an aspect to Chinese culture which is about face as well. So, and part of
Definitely.
that is look at me and how well I'm doing. But I can't speak too much about China and the Chinese. However, in terms of what success means and my own personal sort of experience with it, I would say 5, 10 years ago, I would probably have thought the same way. And maybe that's because that's what I was programmed to believe. Just work hard, make money,
Yeah, with the
status.
background, the immigrant background that you probably also have, I guess.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing.
And
So my parents, similar to what I was saying about the Chinese, like they came here from, at the time it was a part of Yugoslavia, but currently Macedonia, which was a communist country. Neither one of them had much of an education to speak of, much money to speak of. They came to Australia, basically worked labourer sort of jobs, worked really hard to make ends meet, and they very much put those hardworking ethos into me. But at the same time, I think made me believe that I just need to work hard, climb the corporate ladder, make money, have a family, and that's happiness and all the boxes ticked. And it probably wasn't until I was about 35 where I had a reasonable amount of success that I was like, I still feel like there's a bit of emptiness there.
like incomplete.
Yeah. And nowadays, I would say that for me, happiness is first and foremost surrounding myself with good people, like relationships. Like if you have everything in the world, but you haven't got people to share it with, it's cliche, but it's very true. And it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of an empty feeling in many respects. So whether that's romantic interest, whether that's personal relationships, friends, just a good community of people around you, I think it's so important. I would rather have awesome people around me and like 1/10 as much money or external success than 10 times the money, but just really transient, transactional, vacuous relationships or no relationships at all. And then I think ultimately living in accordance with your values. That to me is the ultimate definition of success. Like if you're not living in accordance with your values, you might have external success, but you sold your soul to get it.
Wow. That's a good reminder. So check your values again, guys. And you can get so easily influenced by other people's values if you are not like high on self-esteem, if you're in a low place. I've been there, happened to me before. Yeah, so
Yeah.
values.
And the people you surround yourself with can influence you to,
Absolutely.
and it's not only physical people in this world of social media and Instagram. I think Naval Ravikant said something along the lines of competition is blinding. And it's so easy to jump onto Instagram and see everyone fighting over likes and comments and, oh, this person's doing this thing with marketing and this person's built this e-commerce business. Maybe I should do the same thing and look at all the likes and adulation they're getting. But not once during that sort of thought process, people stop and say, well, what do I really want? What are my values? Where do I think I can contribute the most? What's going to give me energy and joy every day? As opposed to, let me just do that because other people are doing it. And as human beings, we're wired to mirror what we see.
Have you actually ever had a burnout, whether it was in your corporate life or even as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't have diagnosed it as burnout, but there was a period there, probably like 3, 4 years ago, where for a couple of years I worked very little, spent a lot of time on the beach, which was probably a manifestation of just being one down, maybe. 10 years into entrepreneurship or whatever it was at the time, writing books, doing podcasts, public speaking, building a handful of different sort of businesses. And yeah, maybe that was my body and brain just telling me to slow down for a bit. But eventually, like if you don't, you harvest, you reap what you sow. So you need to do it in a sustainable way. So applying some of the things that I talked about earlier, P code sort of methodology means that you can do things longer. But even before you get to that, because P codes basically talks about the tasks you have, apply this. But the tasks you actually have are a reflection of what you choose to do. What you choose to do should be, it's ikigai, right? Like Do something you love, what you're good at, what makes money, and what gives you a sense of purpose.
What's the best business advice or life advice you have ever received? I know you're well read, you listen to a lot of podcasts and so on, but it's about that somebody has given to you personally.
I think the first bit of advice I got a long time ago was, I can sum it up in one word: persist.
Persist.
It's probably not anything new, but it's definitely not. I mean, even Calvin Coolidge, the former US president, his famous quote was, persistence is omnipotent, whereas education, genius, talent, they're everywhere, but people just waste them.
Mm-hmm.
Hard work beats talent. When talent refuses to work hard, like these sort of tropes and mantras have been thrown out for a long time now, but cliches and tropes and whatnot exist and are repeated because they're true. They speak to something that's constant. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, you're going to face setbacks and challenges. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how good your product is. You're in a free market. It's dog eat dog out there. And unless you persist, unless you're constantly learning, testing, iterating, moving, ducking and weaving like a boxer in the ring, you're not going to be successful. So, and the thing about persistence is 90+% of people usually give up when things get hard. And so if you can just persist, you'll be in the last 5-10% standing who are willing to go the mile. And that could be the difference between success and failure.
Persist, persist, persist.
Absolutely.
So what's coming next for you? We're slowly coming to an end. I mean, what are the next 5 years going to look like for you? I don't know if you have any cool plans.
Now what's coming next, I'm going to go for a swim in the pool.
Even if it's a little bit cold today.
It is a bit cold today.
We wanted to do the podcast in the pool, but then somebody complained it was too cold.
It was too cold. I was in there for 2 minutes and I was shivering. I don't know about 40 minutes being submerged without moving.
That would have been cool though, right, guys? So if you read this and if you want me to do a podcast recording in the pool, give me a comment, okay?
Okay.
Sorry, going back to what are your plans for the next coming years?
It's hard to forecast like 5 years forward with everything going on in the world right now with AI.
And also you've achieved a lot already.
Yeah.
Such a global citizen too.
I mean, I recently turned 40, so I think for me...
Belated congratulations. Happy birthday. When was that?
I'd rather not talk about it.
Okay.
But no, I think I say 40. So I wrote an article about my second act, which was really just an article to help people who are turning 40, entering their 40s, to kind of think about it differently, because it can sometimes be a bit of a downer because you've gone through your 20s and your 30s, which is, you know, you're young, it's formative years, it's all new and exciting, and then 40 has this kind of, oh shit, now you're getting old, really growing up. I mean,
Midlife crisis?
Kind of, yeah. But I think with all the tools, assets, networks, knowledge that you've accumulated over that time, and all the self-awareness that you've got, to me, the 40s and 50s as well is like, okay, now that I've got this, how do I want to make an impact in the world? What do I want my second act to be? So, yeah, my last act, I guess, was everything I really did in my 30s, books, businesses, etc., etc. But next, I think I want to do something bigger in terms of impact and purpose on the world. And whether that's something around mentoring teenage boys and young adult men around masculinity and regulating their emotions, that could potentially be something. And then the other thing I've been toying with, which I might pursue, is, you know, I've spent a lot of time in countries like Macedonia and Eastern Europe where socioeconomically they're still way behind, say, Australia, for example. But there are so many first and second generation Australians, Americans, Canadians from those parts of the world whose parents or grandparents migrated, who have the skills, knowledge, tools that can help those kids in those countries, you know, empower themselves to, you know, vastly improve their outcomes rather than just relying on their school system in what are essentially not quite third world countries, but not far off either. So doing something to help give back to kids in developing economies, I think is
Going back to
definitely something.
roots.
Yeah, absolutely. And all this stuff is aligned. Like everything I've ever worked on since I became an entrepreneur has just been about helping other people, whether it's business, um, whatever the case is, through the articles and podcasts. It's just a continuation of that, but just focusing on a different problem and a different sort of customer segment.
Unlocking human potential, as you wrote on your website as well, right?
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, with what you have created and that you're leaving behind in this world, you actually give access to people, no matter like how much money they have, what class they're coming from, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any last words to our global audience from east to the west of this world's hemisphere, to students and entrepreneurs and executives?
I would say sometimes in life, you might feel like you can't be bothered doing anything, or you're like, well, what's the point? It doesn't matter. It's all kind of, I can't speak for your audience, but sometimes one can fall into the nihilistic thinking patterns. But the way I see it is you get one life, you got to do something. So you may as well do something that lights you up. And while it might be hard, better off trying to do that thing and failing at it than just not doing it at all, or spending your whole life doing something that just makes you miserable. So get out there and give it a shot.
That was a very meaningful podcast, I have to say. Guys, if you love today's episode with Steve, please follow him, and also sharing is caring. Wish you all the best and see you somewhere else in the world for the next episode. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jenny.